Hey, so thank you for picking my Zoom presentation to listen to today. I hope you learned something from it, and I hope that it teaches you something now new. I picked Bei Dao's poetry as my essay and presentation topic, and I picked it because I like the liminal spaces he has. And I'm sure you know already, but these gates are actually Japanese, and they symbolize transition between like the living corporeal world and spirit world. And so I decided to add it because it's a transition. And then we have a couple of other transitions in this picture that I like. The transition between the land and the water, and then the transition between the water and the mist. And then I kind of see the sun setting in the background, like the sun gets white and then turns orange and yellow, so we see a sunset happening. I just like this idea of that liminal space between time. So, who was Bei Dao, or who is Bei Dao? Because he's actually still alive. Bei Dao is a 75-year-old Chinese poet, and he's considered to be one of the best in his generation. He was born in 1949 and was in the Red Guard, but he eventually became disillusioned with the government and joined the Tiananmen Square massacre. Let me see. I want you guys to see me better. So, he joined the Tiananmen Square movement, and I guess that was probably pretty scarring to him for everything that had happened. And he started writing reactionary poetry and was eventually banned from China. As his life has gone on, his poetry has gone from very like not very political, but more politically edged to more emotional edged, and he's kind of used his similar writing top tools throughout his time. He moved back to Hong Kong in 2007 and was actually admitted back to China in 2006. I think Beijing hosted the Olympics in 2008. So to me, that may have had something to do with them like wanting to look like a more forward first world country. He taught at several universities in the United States, including Cornell and the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, which really surprised me. Currently, he's an honorary professor at Chinese University in Hong Kong. So I have another slide on why I picked Bei Dao. So I love in his poetry the sense of like transitions, and he kind of has this ability to capture a moment in between two times. I also like that in his writing, he is able to communicate to you without saying anything directly, that he feels like he has a lot of like words he wants to say and emotions that he wants to express, but he can't do it for some reason or another. And I like the liminality in his work. And the picture for this slide I picked was, I guess this is late fall, early winter. There's dew on the ground, and you can see the grass still has some hints of green in it from the summer and the fall. And some of the trees still have leaves, but there's still ice on everything. And I think that these moments in between two times or two parts of life are very interesting, especially for me because I'm graduating and I'm kind of in that space between not exactly a young professional and not exactly a student. So let's get into it. I also picked this picture because it's a transition. It's an abrupt transition, but it is still a transition. Okay, so the first poem I want to talk about is All. And to me, All was the most maybe political, like the most emotionally upset of the three we're gonna go over. And in this poem, he uses his natural imagery to create dread. In the first two lines, he says, All is fade and all is cloud. And to me, he's talking about this idea, like with a cloud, you can reach out, right? And if it's fog, you can touch it and you can try to grasp it. But as soon as you grasp it, the fog's gonna pop out of your hand and it's not gonna be there anymore. All right. And I kind of think that he's saying fate is kind of the same way. Like you might know where you're gonna be or what you're gonna do, but you never know when God or life is gonna throw a wrench into your plans and you're gonna be somewhere else doing something totally different. All right. And I said that this is a sense of dread. I wouldn't exactly say that this is a sense of dread, but it is a sense of stress, right? Any change in your environment and what your life plan is gonna cause you to stress. All right, then the next one. All explosions have a momentary lull, implies imminent pain, and is often preceded by calm. For this one, I picked an example of a supernova. So if you see over here in our picture in the bottom left, this star is going supernova. And from where we're standing, this is probably hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of light years away. Time and space is gigantic, or space time is huge when we're looking at it. We're seeing this transition between it, a star being a star and a star becoming like either nothing or a black hole. And we see the light of that moment where the explosion is like not calm, when just light is emanated. So that moment of the calm before all of the radiation and like harmful light radiation. I'm getting too technical. The moment before the explosion hits. All deaths have a lingering echo, suggests that even after someone has died, their actions will still impact those around them. And this is another one that when I read it the first time, I was thinking like, it depends on how you feel about the person. But the line before it is all explosions have a momentary lull, all deaths have a lingering echo. So to me, I think he's trying to say the same thing as he's creating the time after the death where the person's actions or emotions or how other people felt about them like are most impactful. Answer. Okay, so the last one or the second one is the answer. I think the answer was the one we went over in class. And to me, this is the one where he most overtly expresses his frustration. And I think that he uses blue sky, brackish sea, and glimmering stars to show incredulousness, acceptance, and hope and judgment. So for incredulousness on lines 17 and 18, he says, I don't believe the sky is blue. I don't believe in thunder's echoes. And to me, this shows that in this time of this man's life, he's become so careworn that he's just gonna like not, he doesn't want to hear from other people like around him the way the world is because he feels like they're not telling him what's real and he's willing to like even debate the very founding of existence. Like it's not smart to do it, obviously, and I think he knows that, and I think that's why he's making this statement. Okay, the next ones. On lines 22 and 23 of the answer, he says, if the sea is destined to breach the dikes, let all the brackish water pour into my heart. This uses the natural force of water to destroy and fill to show Bei Dao's acceptance of the world he lives in may no longer exist. So I think I don't know. It for me, my speculation was this poem was probably written in a time when Bei Dao was either banned from China or just after the Tiananmen Square massacre, and maybe he was feeling like the Communist Party as China was could go no longer go on, and then there was something had to come and fill its place. But I think the salty water filling his heart is like his heart is empty and angry, and the water pouring into his heart would be like the justice for the people who he's perceived as like harmed him and everyone else. And then lastly, something that I think is kind of sweet about Bei Dao is like all of his poems do have a hint of happiness and joy and like there can be a better future. And he ends a poem by saying on lines 25, and this is a mistake, it's actually 28. Lines 25 and 28. A new conjunction of glimmering stars are the watchful eyes of future generations, right? So to me, this is hopeful because we're describing the future generations as glimmering stars, but they're also watchful and they're going to judge Bei Dao and the other people of his generation for how they behave and handle situations. Okay. And I picked this picture because it's I think it's pretty much a literal version of what he's written here, and I think it's just a really pretty image that like he uses his imagery to make, right? Like the watchful stars of future generations are looking over the person sitting at the beach as the sun goes down. And let's go on to the next one. So the Roses of Time, we actually didn't go over this one in class. The Roses of Time is a more recent poem by Bei Dao, and it's more like on the emotional side and less on the political side. I wouldn't say these poems are outright political, but this one's really much more so towards the what's in his heart. And I think for men in poetry, that's something we haven't seen a lot, right? Like we want to project out onto other people what we think they should be doing or feeling, but we don't want to think about like what we should be doing or feeling. And I think it's really impressive that he's been able to turn that poetry inward and start thinking about himself. Okay. So he uses um, storms, sunsets, and water to evoke the feeling of time passing. You turn your back together with the storm is said in line two. And this talks about how maybe the past can rush in with the intensity of a storm and like you have to be able to handle that, right? Like, do you want to accept it? Do you want to sit out on the beach and let the storm roll through, or do you want to turn your back to it? And it's okay to go either way. And I don't think he's like telling you how to feel about it, but in this instance, he's turning his back from it. You look backward at the sunset, suggests the end of a moment, the day, or even a stage of life. And when the sword is bent in the water, this was probably the hardest line in everything I studied to figure out what it meant. And I wanted to include it because I think it's really interesting. Um, on the surface, there's different levels we can look at it. On the first level, it's like you could say even the weapons of war don't stand up to time, right? The sword is bent in the water, right? Nature over time, water will erode things. It's a universal solvent. But I think it's time is distorting something sharp and rigid, maybe even emotional, right? Like maybe you had a death in your family or a breakup or you didn't get a job and these things really hurt you. And over time, time will start to heal your pain and soften and wave it. So here are my sources. For information on Bei Dao, I just use Wikipedia. I also read a little bit on Britannica Encyclopedia for some backgrounds on like what makes Chinese literature Chinese, but I didn't really feel like that was needed. His three works, The Roses of Time, All in the Answer, are from different poetry books that he's written, from what I understand. Anyway, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation, and I really appreciate you listening to it all the way through. And have a good rest of your weekend. Goodbye.